I feel like I have some things to talk about. Like I have so many grand visions for what to do with open salt that I never have any time for.
All right, master plans.
Yeah.
One thing I definitely, I'd like to integrate a lot of the same Sphinx tests that are used for things, everything from RST formats and spelling and all that stuff into pretty much each of our projects. And yeah,
Now you did send the theme stuff to Alan for testing, right? I know he
yeah,
talked briefly with me about that.
yeah. I sent him the basic setup of. It's actually pretty easy to get our base theme up and running. We only use some simple overrides that give it more of the salt colored looks.
Hmm.
That he doesn't need to necessarily add. He could just, if he's just using the theme plugin and a few of the conf.py settings that I gave him, um, it should help out quite a bit. He probably would have to look though at like the Sphinx. There's like an extension for versions or something. I'm not quite sure what he may have to do in order to handle the multiple versions content with that theme.
Oh, based on his experience with that, maybe we could port it back towards Enterprise because I know that the
Yes.
support team would really love that.
Yeah. And also I know, yeah, that would be a big deal. I think that would be really good instead of us having our current where we just use the latest PDF builds, because the problem is when you just use the last PDF for a particular version, then later if you go, oh, we need to make a correction that like applies technically, I don't know, making the directions more clear across multiple versions, you're not able to go back and revise like a previous PDF, right? So anyway, yeah, it'll be something good to level up our enterprise install guide in the future.
Let me message Alan and see if he's coming. If he's not, we can just have our own discussion. All right, message sent. We'll see what happens. How are the other working groups going? That good, huh? I see.
I don't think I've been to another one recently. Been pretty busy.
Yeah, I just wonder if they're getting good. I guess I wonder what's the formula for a successful working group and how we can get this one there.
Yeah, I think in part doing stuff is one of the essential ingredients.
You are right about that. Okay, Alan says he is coming.
Sweet. Yeah, so I think doing stuff and, ideally self-managing, I think is another hallmark
Yeah.
of the working group.
One of the things that I've observed that seems to be it seems to help you working groups be successful is for them to have a project, have something to do, not just like a goal, because like obviously like all of the working groups have goals, but like this one is like documentation, but to actually have this is something that the group wants to accomplish. And that way you can have like a goal, you can have a set time of like, okay, we want to have this done by this time.
Yeah.
And once you do, it's kind of like, I don't know, it gives people a reason to join, to get involved.
That makes sense.
So like a lot of the working groups that are successful have those goals, and then it's kind of funny once they finish the project, if a new project doesn't come along, the working group kind of like fades away.
That makes a lot of sense. Hello, Alan.
Hi,
How are you?
doing good. I heard Gareth wants to be the new Docs working group captain.
I'm actually, this is when I announce my coup of every single working group, I'm going to take over all of them.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because I have nothing but time right now. So I figured I might as well fill it with something.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I'm here. I'm a little bit late. Did we cover anything? I only caught half of what Gareth had said, so I don't actually know what the premise of that had been.
No, we were mostly waiting for you, but I had just posed a question like, what do you see as the thing that successful working groups do? What do they all seem to have in common? And so Gareth was just responding that the ones that he notices are the most successful are the ones that have a common goal or a purpose with timelines and things that they're working to achieve that are kind of self-sustaining, that motivate people to come, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Gareth, which groups do you consider successful? Because the couple of groups that I'm somewhat aware of, because I know people in those groups, I don't have a good opinion of them. So what groups are successful to you?
So, I mean, the one that has, I think, sustained the longest in terms of actually, and it's the same people each time. It's very, very small, but it has a consistent attendance at the working group meetings. Is the Mac OS group, and both the three people that, outside of SALT that join every time, they use SALT on Mac to manage Macs, part of their job. So that's their motivation. But each time, like this last one, they had a couple pull requests that they wanted to get in. And so they were, the working group meeting was, okay, what's left to get these pull requests in? Oh, it looks like the tests aren't passing. Fix the tests. Anything else you guys want to make sure it gets in for the next release? Nope, just these two. Okay. But that's their project, is like they have things that they want to accomplish. And so I've noticed a lot of the other ones, like the Windows working group, was a similar had a similar setup where they had a project, they had something that they were working towards a goal. And so each time they would discuss in the working group meetings where they were at with the goal. And it seems like once that goal was met, it kind of, the working group meetings kind of dwindled a bit in their attendance.
Right. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. It's like a revolution, you know. You have something to rally behind. Once you've achieved that, what's left to rally for, right?
Right.
So yeah, that makes sense to me.
Can I ask a question about the Mac OS group? Like, do they tend to plan around release cycles? So like at the beginning of the release cycle, they're like, okay, we're in a new release cycle. Here's all the things we maybe want to accomplish in this release cycle, and kind of use the release as a guideline for their timing and things like that?
Kind of, sort of. It's more like more along the lines of they have things that they're working on. And so if a release, like one of the pull requests in question that they wanted to make sure got into the sodium release, had been pending for probably like a little less than a year. And so a lot of that was like, there was a lot of discussion on the pull request. There was a lot of the stuff related to its delay was just like the open team wasn't merging PRs as quickly because we were waiting on tests get the test suite stable again. But I think probably going forward, they will, now that we have, or we're trying for, we will have more like set in stone, predictable release cycles. I think they will be able to kind of, okay, we know there's a release coming up in whenever the next date is supposed to be, we can plan to get these changes in. And so plan accordingly, as you said, like the projects that they want to work on based on that release cycle.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe that would dovetail well with documentation or something where we kind of like, okay, here's our release cycle. Let's all have buy-in and alignment over here's the number one big goal we want to accomplish or something like that. And of course, people can work on other side projects, individual tasks. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud.
So then I understand the attractiveness to the release cycle system, right? It allows you to have a time frame in which to focus your work. But the scope of that then needs to be discussed. Sorry. The scope of it needs to be discussed because we have like an overarching goal, right? Which is to switch our open salt stuff to a new theme and have the whole backend updated. There, that's a large goal. From some of the other conversations, that's like not even supposed to start until the fall, right? Because we're like doing some closed-in stuff first. And then we have like lots of little features that will just improve quality of life and the communication of information about like individual modules, such as like how much of the testing covers this module that you're looking at the documentation for, or some of the other metadata stuff, things like that, the examples for individual modules. Those kinds of larger goals, well, medium-sized goals, I'll call them, right? Those I think fit really well into the release cycle idea, right? Because that release cycle is several months old at a time, and that gives you, and so that's plenty of time to do discovery, do some testing, put it in there, and then see like, I missed something, it completely doesn't actually work, and start all over, right? That gives you enough time to do that. But then for our smaller issues, and I say smaller just in terms of scope, not necessarily importance, we have just documentation corrections to be made, right? And those, that makes no sense to put those on a release cycle schedule because those take maybe weeks at most, not months. So if we're going to do a cycle, we have to like, in a sense, rally behind those medium issues that we want to accomplish while working on the smaller issues, which is documentation corrections. Because if we just do issues, we'll never really get anything done, right? Because we'll be like, I got my issue done for the next 3 months. I'm good for this release cycle. And then, but at the same time, if we only focus on one of those medium issues, once it's accomplished, in a sense, you've lost what to rally behind. So I tend to like to have 2 or 3 of those medium issues selected, because if one person is only interested in one of those 3, he can still contribute. If someone's interested in 2 of them, that's great. You can bounce back and forth, right? But if you're only doing one issue at a time, then you lose anybody that wasn't interested in that particular issue.
I'm totally fine with that. I like what you've articulated. Can I ask then, can we check in on all the steps that are needed to implement that new theme and the general backend improvements that are, can we check in on that and see, like, is there any pre-work we can do prior to, well, and let's like, it might help if we can figure out how it aligns with what we're doing with enterprise as well, because if we can make those 2 rhyme, that increases the chance that we can get technical writer or resources devoted to open salt stuff as well.
Right. Essentially, you're asking for a project manager to sync all that, and that's like the definition of where a project manager is actually useful rather than micromanaging engineers, right? And so I'm attempting to do that. And frankly, I think everyone's probably noted that I like fell off the map for the last couple of weeks because my actual work has kind of been in a pitched, fiery battle, and I'm trying to save it. But that's what I've been trying to do for this team, is be your project manager and less of your I'm the head engineer and we're going to do it exactly this way, right?
Yeah, no worries. So if
yes,
I understand correctly,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, no, my bad. I was just going to check, like, so it seems like what we need to do in terms of pre-work is that we need to do testing on the material theme and identify any back-end improvements that are needed.
Yes, and either Bryce or Derek, they sent me that back-end theme. And like I said, I've fallen off the map, so I haven't tested it. But once that is accomplished, like you do some testing, whoever does it does some testing, says, yep, it works. Then from then on, from here all the way until we actually enact that theme, we can be doing testing and coding and all that for those medium goals we're trying to meet. We just wouldn't get to literally see them on the website until everyone's like, okay, leadership says we can put in the new theme for OpenSalt. So yes, that is accomplishable. It really, the floodgates was just, I hadn't actually bothered to do the testing yet for open.
No, I think you're fine, and I don't think there's a huge demand on our side right at this exact moment. So it's okay that your other work has been taking precedence. Can I sync up with you really fast about what's going to happen in the next release cycle for the docs team, on the understanding that this is going to be in flux a little bit? So is that beneficial? Do you want me to tell you what's going on, or?
I'm fine with that. Can you start out though with the parameters of the release cycle dates? I don't actually have a concept of time for your guys' release cycle at the moment.
You're totally fine. Okay, so June 17th is when this release cycle will end, and the new release cycle will begin. So the next release cycle for 6.4, if that's the numbering system we're using, I would assume that's what we're using. Yeah, for SSE.
Okay, yeah.
That is usually timed to finish before SaltConf, which typically happens in November. I don't know if that's going to change with coronavirus stuff, but
and that reconciles with about when you guys are supposed to have your theme deployed on for your closed service stuff, and then we start considering the OpenSalt stuff.
Exactly. So we're looking at we're looking at July through October, end of October is we're looking at that kind of release cycle, and things like that. So what we worked on in this previous release cycle is that we were improving our SSE installation guide, and that's looking good. That core content is there, but that project has generated a lot of tech debt items that will probably have to take another month or so to resolve those tech debt items. So we're still throwing resources at that particular project for a little bit, probably through July. And then what I think is going to happen is that we're going to not be able to, I think we'll be able to implement the material theme in the SSE help docs, but that my original hope was that we would be able to get the SSE help docs online by the end of November. And I don't feel confident in that timeline anymore. So I think what I think is probably going to happen is we'll get the SSE help docs onto that material theme, and we'll do all of the planning and the discovery work to get the SSE help docs online. And we'll probably time it, it's possible we might time it so that both the SSE help docs improvements and the OpenSalt improvements release at the same time, possibly. But yeah, so that's the way things are going so far.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but
I mean, it gives me a span of like what's going on. Yeah, I had no concept of the 6.3 release because of the projects that I'm working on. I get like easy access to all of those features that are coming out before it's released, right? So I had no idea. Okay, so I would say then we're not going to do anything for this release cycle, right? Hang on, recalibrating. Is the OpenSalt and the SSE's cycles on the same thing? Are they in sync?
yes.
Okay, so Sodium's being released June 17th and SSE 6.3.
Sodium might be a week before. They're usually like slightly ahead of SSE, but roughly the same.
All right. Well, we're going to calibrate to OpenSalt, not to SSE, because OpenSalt docs group. We won't do anything for this cycle to we're going to meet by this end of this. Instead, we'll use these 2-3 weeks. We'll use these weeks to try to set up what we already have several issues set up in the Docs Hub for conversation, like what we want. Let's pick 2 of them, and we'll say that like this is what we're going to work on. This is what we're going to do from mid-June all the way till whatever's supposed to be that November release. And we will, and that'll be like our medium goals, in that we're still supposed to be doing issues. We're obviously a blocker for 2 of those medium goals is getting the website tested, and I'll work on that. Another thing that's come to my attention that is more of Salt Stack rather than open Salt people is that there's an issue for the disimpaired that came up for people that have loss of eyesight or less eyesight. I don't know. There's an issue for it, and basically they were unable to access the Salt docs through the intermediate system they use to either read to them or blow it up.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I try to look at it because though I don't think that really affects just about anybody really, like it's probably like 5 people in the whole world that care about that for the Open Salt project. I have a bit of a heart to look out for those kind of people. But I felt like I didn't know exactly what was going on to begin with. I would love for somebody to take a look at it and at the very least like write down some notes of what needs to happen. Because I just like see it. They mention a library from Perl, and they mentioned that they can't open the website, and I'm like, this is not enough context for me to help. But I would like to, if we can get some more eyes on that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. That you said that was for Open Salt docs?
Yeah, that's for Open Salt docs. Basically what the ticket explained was that there's somebody who's normal functioning, doesn't have any disimpairment stuff going on, and they work with an engineer that seems to have a loss of eyesight, maybe not completely, but some kind of loss of eyesight. And so then they were trying to send that engineer Open Salt docs because they're using Salt, and the engineer couldn't access it through his program that assists him in being able to see information or read information. And so I'd like to just fix that. And
Oh,
that,
definitely.
again, that's most Open Salt people won't care about that because it doesn't affect them. But for Salt Stack, I figured you guys might care.
Yeah, I care. At least I do.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. So, yeah, that's that. Let's go ahead. Let's just go ahead and look at the docs. Let me pull up the Docs Hub, and let's just pick 2 issues right now. Let's pick the 2 issues that we think is interesting, and we can argue about it over the next week in the Docs Slack. If somebody's like, I don't want to do that, and then we'll move from there. That way we can just get the ball rolling on like this is what we're planning to do.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, can you see my screen? All right. So what we had. It's been a minute since I looked at this. Tags have already been approved. I think this got finally accepted, right? The 404 error bot that was being made and all that. Did that get finally accepted, merged? Does anybody know? Maybe not. Okay, that's fine.
That add a website scraper to check the hyperlinks.
Yeah.
I did. So a big PR did get merged that I had. That was one where I had kind of done some scripting against a bunch of the links and then adjusted them and reviewed them based on
redirects and
redirects. Yeah, specifically on redirects. And but I didn't actually add any like automated tooling since then. And I have not gone deeper. Like it went only at the docs directory level. So it didn't go through the links in like the modules themselves, for example, because I did notice that there's like links throughout the doc strings that end up getting pulled in and generated in docs that also had the same problems.
Okay.
So, but I haven't done any progress since that initial PR was accepted.
Yeah. Can we? Is it? I guess I don't have anything. I thought I had an issue open with this. But maybe we should create this in an issue, and then you can link the code that is related to that, just for the redirects, because I'm sure for 404, it basically what need to happen is there need to be a whitelist of URLs, links that are ignored, right? Because they're like example.com or whatever. And then there needed to be some kind of either issue auto generation or report made for the ones that were considered valid URLs and didn't work. I think that was all. Those were the two things that really were like would finish this out as the scraper bot.
Got it. Yeah. I think because that's one thing I didn't do was that I did figure out where I'd be putting those, where I'd be placing the false positives to skip,
Right.
or even just the ones that are vetted that we want to skip, and because they might be like a login page redirect or something else. So
Right. So yeah, login page redirects. There's example.com stuff, and then there was a bunch of websites where they're actually valid if you have the service running locally on your machine. Like it's a valid link to see some kind of documentation, but it's not valid because you're not running it from normally.
Right. I do have I just put in the Zoom group chat a one issue that I was kind of going off of that I ended up linking my merged PR to just for reference, and I can continue to use that issue with future PRs in Salt Open related to the resolution of that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine for now.
Cool.
And if I have to adjust that, we'll adjust it later.
Awesome.
The collapsible element thing, that's obviously coming from, it's going to become enabled from the change in theme. And what did you call that theme, Elisa? It was
It's called the material theme.
material theme. Okay. So that in a sense is like going to be done. Now, this is built off of that. Convert Sphinx documentation. That is kind of going on. We kind of set that aside with too many pieces moving around, and then that's an ongoing project, which should be broke down.
I apologize, and I know that we've gone over this a couple of times, but can you remind me? So the idea with the multi-repo resource is that, or multi-repo source, is that the inline docs for like modules and things like that that are in the actual code, that's going to stay in the Salt repo, but then we're going to pull out a separate repo for the open Salt docs, just like the core docs that aren't related to the modules and things like that. Is that the idea behind that?
That's what I wanted to do. Again, I'm not sure if we were going to accomplish it. I can't remember where we left off on that conversation. But the idea was that way be a faster turnover rate for PRs, for adjustments and improvements, because the open Salt docs team doesn't need to worry about like, is this a code change? Did you provide a test? Like, no, it doesn't matter because this is just talking about something.
Oh, I would love that so much. I'll see if I can get some support for this. I'll work on it.
Right. Okay. And then, all right. And so then some of the bigger issues that were like, these are probably more of the mediums, was add hyperlinks to the module code coverage. That one's a big one. That's just generally going to give metadata of like, this is your module that you want to look at in documentation. Is it even being tested anymore? Like, is it that obsolete that it doesn't exist, or is it got 99% coverage and you should consider this like super stable? Recycling the homepage. This was a ongoing conversation that we were talking about because the community page halfway took over what the main page was doing. The docs.saltstack page was, and the argument for that page, that homepage originally, was that like this provides like lots of resource links, but I've never met anybody that bothers to look down the homepage for the resource link to how to do X, Y, Z. And then it's got a bunch of books at the bottom. Again, never heard anyone that goes to the docs website to find books, right? So I'm not sure that's useful for that anymore, and could potentially be recycled in something useful, like saying like this page was added or this page was updated. I don't know.
Can I follow up on that really fast? Like that's something that's definitely weighing on my mind, and I would like to see us tackling at least the discovery work for what we're going to do to change that homepage in the next release cycle. So this is something that's definitely on my mind. And I think I mentioned that to you in passing, and you had mentioned that your only concern is you don't want the community to freak out that like SSE is taking over this page and pushing out open salt or something like that. Would you be willing, I mean, if you don't want to have that discussion here, that's okay, but would you be willing to tell me a little bit more about what kind of feedback or things I need to gather from the community to better understand what I should not do with that page.
Right. Yeah. 1 second here. Let me. Is it that one? This is the new page that was created, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. This has been invented. Let me just look here for a second. So this is probably controlled by advertisement and then links to multiple resources. That's what I'm assuming just looking at this. The original idea that was to balance SSE and open salt was to make this section here basically become, oh, sorry, I messed that up. Oh, I see what's going on. Zoom's got its little bar blocking me. Salt stack. So the original idea was to take what this is like referencing, right? And more or less kill this and turn this into a Facebook scroll page where it shows the latest things, both from dev blogs, open salt releases, SSE releases, major bug fixes, working group announcements, things like that. So in a sense, like Cassandra, instead of putting it into Slack all the time, she would be into like 5 or 6 different Slacks, and then to the 3 IRCs and to the email list, it would go here. And so then it'd be an active scroll list. And so then my warning had been like, this can't just be SSE advertisement. It needs to involve like, what is open salt doing? What is the community doing with it? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was this little announcements blurb on the left-hand side there.
Yeah. And so, and just like, it's kind of cute, right? Because like nobody checks those. And then like, that's nice. I don't even know who's like does that, right? Like it says 3000.3, so somebody's doing it, or it's automated, right? And then here's a little bit of advertising. That's cool. And then you have more things that no one ever looks at, so on and so forth. And then here's like a small community page, and then books.
Yeah, I know.
Like it's a good faith effort, but like no one uses it. It's, you know.
And if I understand correctly, the thing that people, if they do come to this site, they click on documentation and then like modules, right? That's like
no. They come to the site and they say
and just hit the search, yeah.
Yep, and that's exactly what I do. And I go, okay, I wanted to learn about Salt Run.
Yeah, because that is something, that's a piece that, this is why I say that the discovery component of this might take a while, because I think search is really crucial to making this site valuable.
Oh yeah, search should be like right here. Like
exactly.
top
it needs to be the big fat, like you come here and you see a big search box and then everything underneath it is icing, basically.
Yeah. Another thing that would is probably secondary to this conversation, like this is just a benefit but not necessarily the doc working group's job, is that notoriously you cannot use Google to search for salt stuff. You have to come to this Google Enhance search to find searching in your docs. And we've hypothesized, a couple of people we've talked about in passing, we're pretty certain that that's a bug, or you guys haven't made the right connection into the Google engine that you should be allowed to do.
That's exactly right.
Because when they come here and they say Salt's Run, there should be, here's Salt Run, that's good. But like usually there'd be like 5 or 6 more from your website of different slightly related things, right?
Well, there's even times when you will search, at least when I looked at this back in December, you could search for a thing on that search bar on the documentation site that then even opens up competitor pages, which
yeah.
Okay.
And for anybody that's watching this recording, I'm using DuckDuckGo. I made the switch to DuckDuckGo, so whatever. So I know that was kind of like nonsensical, and everyone's like, well, of course nothing showed up for Google. You're not even using it. But yeah, so that's what that was for. This was to become something more of a constant hub of updates and all that, showing life in the project in a non-technical way, I guess, is kind of what I'm saying. And so like when you guys do your Twitch streams, right, that would like post up on here and be like, Wayne is active. Don't watch him on Twitch, And then the next one would be like, CVE of the security thing happened. Here's what you need to know. and so on and so forth, right? Like that, they'd just be popping. And so that's what that was, right? And so this kind of like, it has the documentation and it has the download page, right? Documentation, downloads. So like they're slightly overlapping now, except for this one's like the new hotness.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, this is definitely more now obsolete and should be considered for, refurbishing and used elsewhere.
Yeah, and I'm kind of feeling sad that this conversation apparently only took place between probably Cassandra and marketing, because I'm a stakeholder in this and have an opinion, but it's okay. I'll
Yeah.
make sure that conversation happens soon. So.
Well, I think, so this was my personal experience as a programming consultant, right? But I think it's actually more beneficial that that conversation for that community page only took place between Cassandra and marketing. And then they have already coming from the standpoint that, okay, and other people are going to be involved. So here's the next person and this person, because we all love meetings and meetings are great. Meetings are not great at decision-making. They're great in giving everybody a stakeholder, right? And so like when I'm managing 2 companies at a time, even though we all have our big meeting, I tend to have a one-on-one with one company and then a one-on-one with the other company. And then we come in and make sure we all said the same thing. And so that's probably, as long as they don't consider that community page their baby and they need to protect it from everybody, it should be fine for us to make any adjustments.
Okay.
So that's my hope.
Mostly I'm just trying to get a sense of like all the buy-in and alignment work I need to do in the next release cycle. So.
And I just threw a link into the chat too that I forgot that there's also a security announcements page that was created that was meant to be an automatically updated page with an RSS feed for monitoring, but I don't really know the details behind how that is managed and updated, especially because a lot of people were like, oh, I wish that I had an RSS feed to monitor so that I could get notified when a CVE was released or something. So it does have an RSS feed link on that page, but I'm not really sure the details for how that's all
I know it's
managed.
updated. I don't remember precisely how. I'm not sure if it's articles in Bevy that do that or if it's something else. But I do know that it does get updated, and like if you talk to the content marketing folks, like they should know in that channel.
And it's not on your guys' new community page. Oh, there is a CVE though.
Does that link go there at least?
And that doesn't go there either.
It may link to something down there.
If I spell correctly, maybe.
If you scroll down to the bottom of this page, yeah, okay, those are not security tags. So I'm not sure how it ends up getting in there.
Yeah, okay.
But I do know something gets in there, and it does exist. It's just, I don't know where it gets.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna do super amounts of criticizing because we're recording and we're supposed to be doing our project, not arguing with other people's. But my 2 thoughts from what I just saw with the community and that security announcement page is good. We're doing stuff. We're trying to update and be new, and it looks generally pleasing to look at. 2, there isn't an overarching project manager for any kind of documentation slash announcements and all that. And that's going to hurt it because I wasn't aware security announcements existed, right? I'd be willing to bet if I did a poll right now, 99% of Salt users don't know security announcements exist.
Yeah.
And so that, it's really disjointed. It's fractured.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is my diplomatic way of saying it. It just sounds like the left hand has not been talking to the right. We've had a problem with siloing our content, and we need to stop that silo and get these pieces to talk to each other.
Right. And so now there'll be a new announcement next week that the documentation group has been disbanded. So, okay. So that was that. Health and metadata, that's the one that I think a lot of people will enjoy. That shows module age, number of open and closed issues per plugin family. That I'm specifically saying plugin family because I'm tracking that some modules have multiple documentation pages and you can't exactly say what's related to who. And so it makes it a bit more broad. SaltStack or community sponsored modules, right? And that was, I don't know the status of Pop and Item. I know that it's still doing things, but I haven't heard any huge announcements about it from Tom Hatch. But that last bullet there is with the assumption that Pop moves forward and SaltStack disinherits a bunch of third-party modules and says the community will own these and exclusively own those, and SaltStack will protect these core modules and own these. If that happens, then this metadata plug, it becomes important to say, like, this is a community-driven one, or this is a SaltStack sponsored one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that metadata then would be kind of even more easily accessible with each of them being siloed out. Like you have there, kind of you'd be able to get module age in the sense of when was the last update to that particular repo, or when was how many issues are associated with that particular repository of that.
Right. My only concern that I don't think has been addressed with Tom Hatch and everybody else and all that, like I'm in favor of that split, that schism, right? The great schism of modules. My only concern is that GitHub, unless you guys are doing something with them, is not designed for a multi-project repo tracking system for issues. Because you really don't want to have 3 issues over here and 2 issues over there and doing that all over the place, because then all of you open source engineers will be pulling your hair out. Like, I checked the 5, but, well, there's 6 more you forgot to check. Oh, okay, my bad. And then sometimes, there's multiple times actually where issues transcend multiple modules. And so how do you do that, right? Because am I supposed to make an issue for the same issue for 4 different modules, even though it's going to be the same one fix? And so that's my only concern with that, is looking into the future, is I don't know how issue handling is going to be done. Like I'm on another project where they have 16 repos, but they only have 1 repo they track all the issues on, because they knew that it'd be too hard for their members to be able to check every single one of them and keep track of them. So I don't know if that would take place here as well, but that definitely needs to be discussed by leadership at some point.
I know that GitHub is trying to mirror some of GitLab's functionality in that respect, like that top bar up there, the black one that's got pull requests and issues and stuff. Like, there's project boards that you can generate on a org level.
Okay.
And do some things like that. It's definitely not as widely publicized, I think, or possibly even encouraged. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Because if that's at an organization level, you're not going to let every open source user join your organization.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a good problem to have, because it means you're progressing and the project's getting that big to where you can do this, but it's an issue that needs to be addressed at some point. Yeah. So either way, though, the plugins, I think that can probably be split out into multiple different medium issues to be explored and coded on.
Yeah.
Add project board page for requesting code developers. That's an insane project. I'm just going to keep that away from us for now. That's super ambitious. Hyperlinking between state modules and inherent. These again are mediums. Miss markup. Yep. Medium. So we can pick some of these and say these are the 2 we care about. So this one is a pretty easy medium in terms of understanding what we're trying to do. The discovery's there. Now we need to figure out how to fix it code wise. This is basically where some of the code, which should be code, is not printing correctly. Like the definitions of a function aren't showing as code. And so then the way that they render on the screen is very mashed and in your face. And
so I think that might have to do with the fact that we haven't standardized on, are we using the classic Sphinx style, or are we using the Google Sphinx style for documenting our modules and states. And I forget who I was having the discussion with or where the discussion was happening, but there was a discussion. And the thought from that is we should just kind of decide as a documentation working group which thing we propose and write a set and say, we're going to standardize, boom, this is the way we are going to do things within Salt. And then we can I'm pretty sure there's a way to enforce that with like a pre-commit hook or something, and that would make life much easier for contributors because they wouldn't have to be thinking about, oh, which one do I do? Their pre-commit
Right.
hook is just say, you did this wrong, change it to this, and there you go, you're done.
Yeah, because there's definitely. Yeah, I remember having a conversation around this too before, because like you're right, we don't have standards on the doc string formatting for, and so every module documentation page has, sometimes the parameters aren't documented at all, like the arguments aren't,
Yeah.
or sometimes they are and it's just weird, or they accidentally didn't do the code block formatting properly, so it's.
Oh yeah, I've definitely fat fingered some of the code before. I'm like, that is right. What are you talking about? And then it's like a double quote, single quote, double quote. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think, and then this, I remember talking, I think I just talked to Sage a little bit about some of this stuff too, and it's interesting because it will also be with the fact that we're going to be breaking out modules, and that means we're likely going to be keeping in core modules. So does that mean that the core modules are going to be the ones that follow a particular format, because we won't be able to really fully control broken out? If there are isolated repositories associated with modules that are not in the same repo, then that means, would they then follow whatever the standard is of whoever's managing that particular repo? Like,
what I think will happen is your core modules will fit, that'll all be in sync, and that's great. And then what I've seen in other projects that like have independent repos but are technically part of the project, right? Like they're a good piece, is that is picked up by somebody, or it's still owned by the organization, but anyone can do whatever they want with it, in a sense, like, small oversight. And then they petition, they request to, like, in a sense, merge it for that month or that week or whatever, and then it goes through a quick review system, which is usually completely automated. And so then the idea is that, like, you have given ownership to Derek, and he said, all right, Derek owns module XYZ. And Derek says, okay, I am giving you this. I have updated this project. It has 3 new pushes and all that. And so I'd like you guys to take the documentation. They go, okay, we trusted Derek. We gave him control of that. We're going to run it through the automated tests. Automated test says everything's correct. And they have like a little, and you have like a little blurb up there that says, like, this is community driven and may not be correct. And so,
right.
Yeah. And so there's just like some kind of disclaimer of like we don't have direct oversight over this because, like, we don't want to.
Yeah, it's a good point, because that's also like more reasoning for why of having the docs separated, because that means the build process of those docs would be pointing to individual repos that go through some kind of specialized approval process to be included in what ultimately becomes the overall open docs. And then they could have the little header that if they're not part of that core, if they're a separate one that went through that process, they could have that little header that you're talking about, and use the same docs automation to ensure that they're using the proper format.
A good example of this is Stackstorm. They're kind of a pseudo competitor of your guys', kind of. I don't know, they kind of fill their own space. But the way it was explained to me for them, and from what I saw, is I might not know how to get there actually, because I don't use the product that often, is that they have their core, right? And then there's like a bunch of custom modules. I don't know if they have it looks like they don't have a link to like where they keep track of all those modules, but there's lots of community modules that are, like, in a sense, put up there like you do to Docker, right? Like Docker Hub, you'll throw up your Docker image. It's the same idea with their with like Stackstorm's, whatever they call them, modules. They're like, we host the location for you to put those up, and then people can, like, browse them and decide to use them or not. And so you guys will probably end up doing something similar. What's up, Wayne?
I said, so like a package registry type deal.
Yeah. And so, like, I don't know if you got, I feel like you guys will have to do that, because if you schism your modules and you say these are the core, this ships with salt, and then these are all the extras, you want to make it really easy to install the extra stuff. So that way it's easy to install salt in all of those packages people want. Because if it's hard to install it, then, like, people are going to be less wanting to use it.
Yeah, if it's not discoverable.
Right. And you'd also have to have some kind of security tools in place.
Right, but if
associated
you
with
do that,
being community driven.
right, but that might be better. Actually, the more I think about that's probably healthy is that you guys have, you know, a distributor set up, right, where people put up their own modules that you're hosting, and then from there you can probably link into the documentation and make sure it's roughly uniform to what your guys's are, because it'll be on your guys' website, and so they'll want to adhere to the way you guys do it, and then that links back to their GitHub, right? That when they look at the package and it gives a summary, and then at the bottom it's like, this is their GitHub, kind of like they do on PyPI, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's probably where you guys will be marching to if you do the pop. So, so that's just a prediction, Tom. Let me know if I'm right. You know. So I say let's go ahead and do this one, because this one I think can be argued about now and looked at now, even with us switching over to the new theme. Because if there's just something that's not standardized, it's going to show up in the other theme too. And then and again, we can do another roughly easy one of hyperlinking state modules to their execution module. That would be at the top of their page. That's another pain point for people, where they're like, I need the execution module of this, I need the state module of this one, and then they just, you know, they look at the wrong one, they write the wrong code.
Yeah, especially when you're starting out. I had that problem all the time. It feels like that should be a relatively easy Sphinx plugin to build, where it's just like, oh, this is in states, oh, this is in modules. That means it connects to the other thing.
It should be if they have the same naming convention, but I'm suspicious that I've seen.
I was gonna say, I know for sure there are some that don't adhere to that, so we'd have to have like a way to indicate that if it's kind of like the virtual that we use already, but basically do something like that within the doc string to say, you know, links to or module or state or whatever if there's an overridden one. Because like, for instance, the Keystone module that exists, the Keystone state depends on that. But there's also a Keystone NG that is supposed to be the next future. But I was also talking to Tyler Akmod, and he was saying that Shade, I guess, is terrible and not a good way to interface with OpenStack now. And there's like an official OpenStack library, so maybe there's a third Keystone.
OpenStack still exists?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm throwing shade.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So those two items are. So the first item there with the mismatch markup, Elisa, you can definitely contribute there, because I know you're less on the tech side. And then that secondary hyperlink one is something more like Wayne and Derek and I can play with. Is there anything else you're interested in as well?
Will you assign me to that one, like so that it's in my inbox? Would that be okay?
Yeah, I gotta convert it to an issue. I'll do that in a minute. I'm gonna mess it up. But okay, and so we'll call those our two ones for right now. We're gonna look at. Honestly, those could probably be done in a couple weeks if we just focused on them. But if we do, we'll pick two more medium ones, and then we can report to ourselves that we're months ahead. We've already finished this month's rollover. Cool. I'm glad that we got to talk. Like I said, I've been disconnected a little bit, just trying to get other things working, and I've had personal life stuff going on here, good things, and so I've been super just disconnected, and so I'm glad that like you guys didn't just disintegrate while I was gone.
No, you're fine. We've also been buried too, so it happens.
All right. Are we going to do 2 weeks or a month? Because of the way things are going, would like to do it another month one, in attempts to have more Slack communication instead of meeting.
I vote for that myself.
That'd be fine. Let's just make sure we communicate that to Cassandra, and we should be okay.
Okay. And is there anything else we want to discuss, cover, thumbs up, thumbs down? Make Gareth new captain. He's got such a good pose photo. I mean, come on.
There was a thing brought up, I think, during the open hour about salt bin and actually like making sure the documentation for that, like kind of getting that under the working group umbrella. So just, I guess, a thing to be aware of, and we can discuss more.
Yeah. Is there I don't play with GitHub's API and plugins enough. Is there an ability to auto generate an issue from another project, from another repo?
I believe so.
You definitely could with the API and writing a script. At the very worst.
Well, I'm trying to like think of how to be a good project manager even if I have restricted manual hours to give. And so one of those was like I've been trying to be the hub, Docs hub, to put all the issues related to documentation so it's easy to browse and look at and like work from there. But I've been doing it manually where I create an issue and then I like just link to the open salt issue. But if I can make that automatic, then that's, I don't know.
Are you wanting to keep a copy, or are you just wanting to move the issue in general?
So not move the issue. I'm happy with two issues here, right? Either I'm just gonna get it. So either what I want is that if one of these is placed, right, rework, correction, documentation on the salt side, it makes an issue over here and just links it. Or two, if the documentation correction or whatever label is added to one of these issues, it just makes a full copy of it to here. And then every time someone messages something here, it copies it back over to there. But I'm fine with either of those, right? One's more intense than the other, but it would make this all automatic so that way when I'm contributing, right now what I've been doing is like, all right, I can give them a couple of hours this week, right? And with that, I'm like, I'm going to do some issues. But instead of what happens, I end up doing some of this. Like I'm like documenting issues, and that's my hour or two instead of actually spent doing something.
Yeah.
And so that was my question / interest. But if that does exist, I'm going to totally petition to have that done automatically.
I do know that I remember talking to Sage before, where Sage was using some tools that were hitting the GitHub API to manage and do stuff with issues, if I remember right. So Sage might be someone who's had experience with certain CLI or tools or Python scripts using the API. If I remember that right. I don't know if so she could be someone to reach out to potentially on that.
Okay, cool. I'll bother her when I have time. All right, guys. Good sync meeting and saying that we're all alive. Y'all have a good work week and good weekend coming up here. Take care.
I'm good. Thanks.
That's a wrap. Thanks, guys.
Bye.